you know what they say. What goes up must come down. After a strong point streak, our 2 games this week were not as great. Dropped them both. But we have 4 weeks to prove that that little point streak wasn't a fluke. That and more on this episode of View from Outside the Tank. Hey guys, Matt back here with some more Sharks news from the week. As you probably expected, putting this up a day later than I had anticipated or hoped to do, but just in time for a 4-game week. This week, it looks like we've got the Mammoth, the Kings, the Senators, and then the Bruins. So a full week of games this week with back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday. Should be several opportunities to prove that our point streak wasn't a fluke, because 2 games this week would make you possibly think otherwise. So rough week, only 2 games this week. Calgary and Seattle. Calgary, that game, it looks like we may have missed our plane to Calgary. Not sure what happened, but we did not look good in any facet of the game. Came out later that I guess Warsaw gave the team an off day prior to that game, and it looks like instead they decided to take 2 off days. But the reality is, going into this season, I don't think any of us expect the team to be particularly good. So throwing a dud in there from time to time shouldn't be surprising. We shouldn't expect that just having a point streak is going to allow us to continue to keep up that pace. We haven't just immediately turned a corner and now we're a good team. That's not how life or hockey works. And I think that was proven to us this week. You were hoping for more shots from the gallery in that Calgary game because it was really a premier sort of future of NHL goaltending matchup between Askarov and Wolf. Askarov got to show that he is part of that future because he looked fantastic in that game. Wolf had a shutout, but he only faced whatever it was, 14 shots, 15 shots. So he didn't really have a whole lot of work. And a small chunk of those shots was right at the end of the game. I think he faced 1 shot in the first period, maybe. So yeah, we got denied a showcase of 2 outstanding goalies. But, we're seeing from Askarov that this can be a team eventually that wins those 2-1 games, 3-2 games, because we have somebody between the pipes. It looks like that is going to be able to keep us in those games where you need a big save from time to time. And then we went into Seattle and we actually played a halfway decent game against Seattle. Their first goal was allowed with certainly no more or less of a kicking motion than our disallowed goal was on what would have been our second goal. And, you can't look back and say that changes the entire outcome of the game. Who knows? Like, realistically, that goal counts by Will Smith and we're up 2-1, and maybe that does change the dynamic and they don't come down in the next few minutes and score those back-to-back goals to take a 3-2 lead like they took a 3-1 lead in reality. But I do think that potentially changes the dynamic. And after the game, Warsaw came out and said that, you ask 100 people, 50 people say it's a kick, 50 people say that it's not. Unless those 100 people are split between 50 Seattle fans and 50 San Jose fans, there's no way that that's the case. It just simply wasn't a kicking motion, and that's fine. Like, you're gonna get those calls against you from time to time. I think if on the ice it had been ruled a goal prior to the review, instead of immediately being disallowed, that it would have played out the same way, where the call wouldn't have been reversed. I think that was the bigger deal, was the refs just simply didn't want to reverse the call on the ice. But like I said, even if we go up 2-1 there's no saying that those next couple goals for Seattle don't happen and they still win 3-2 or 4-2. But it did change the flow of the game a little bit. And that game for sure, we looked a lot better in than we did in the Calgary game. And so, that's good. You need to have those bounce back games, at least bounce back in effort after a rough game like we had in Calgary. So the effort was at least there, which is good. Now, coming into this week, there's been some different talk about some different things. And one of the main things looks like John Klingberg is going to get the night off tonight. And there are a lot of fans, sometimes myself included, that are totally okay with that. Klingberg, when he's at his best, is the kind of player that we need on our blue line. Like he can control the offense. He can make the breakout passes that we need. He can quarterback the power play. Like all those things that he's really good at are things that we really need. But he hasn't looked himself. And whether that's due to some nagging injury that they're not saying, or even just coming back from the injuries that he's had in the previous couple seasons, you never really come back the same as when you went down. And so you hope that he finds that, and you hope that he recovers a little bit. But who knows how or when that's going to happen. And there are worse things you can do than giving him the night off to watch from the press box and maybe figure some stuff out. It does concern me that with him going out, Nick Leddy's probably playing. I could do without that guy playing, but the opposite side to that is if our expectation isn't to win, yes, I'm happy to make the playoffs, and that would be super exciting. But we signed a guy like Nick Leddy because our goal is to eventually flip him at the trade deadline. And if you're going to flip him at the trade deadline, you need to play him whether or not he's playing. So I fully expect him to be in tonight against Utah. So we'll see. I expect a better effort. Utah is coming off playing the Ducks last night and losing in overtime. So, one, I think they'll be looking to bounce back from that. But two, it is the back end of a back-to-back. So we'll see if it's better that we had 2 days off or they're playing back-to-back. They are an up-and-coming team in the league. They are kind of, I don't want to call them the blueprint for what we're trying to do, but they are finally coming out of that high number of high draft picks streak and finally putting it together and starting to climb the standings a little bit. So, they're kind of that litmus test for what we think we're going to be. They started Desmelka last night, so we should get their backup today. And I would anticipate Askey starting today just because he's been going so good, and Ned got the start in Seattle. And when they're both healthy, it seems to be at worst a rotation. At best, Askey's getting 3 games to Ned's 2 or something like that. So that's my expectation for starting goalie tonight. And like I said, I don't think Klingberg will be playing. What'll be interesting with that is by pulling Klingberg, when he went back into the lineup, we kind of shoehorned him back into that first power play unit role. With him not on the ice, our power play was really humming when Orlov was on the top unit, and so he's going to have to be there again. So we'll see if maybe that does provide the spark we need on the power play. What else? Michael Misa is looking like he's going to be out longer than expected, although I don't know that it's really longer than expected, like I think I alluded to in a previous episode. I think this is sort of a long play thing where they're trying to figure out how to bring him back late enough where he can come back and do a rehab stint in the AHL and then end up going to World Juniors and then potentially coming back to us, because that gives us a solid 2 months at least to figure out a trade situation to get rid of an NHL contract so we can get there or get down to 49 so his 50 won't harm us. But yeah, that's kind of a bummer because you want to see that development. On the flip side, obviously Mac lost a chunk of time at the beginning of last year, and that worked out okay. You're going from whatever it is they play in the OHL, 50, 60 games up to 80, and so maybe that first year, if Mies is able to see 50 games in the NHL, those are 50 harder games than they are in the OHL, and so that does improve your development. And then And then you can look forward to next year, hopefully being a solid 70 to 80 game season. And again, it gives us more time to explore the trade market and really figure out where we're going to be, because going back to previous episodes, I love Wenberg. I think Wendy's great for us. And he has really formed a great part of a second line, but we know that he's not going to be part of that second line when we take whatever that next step is. In fact, he's likely not to be on the roster, unless we just don't feel like we have the guys in the AHL to fill those third and fourth line center roles. So, maybe that's what it is between now and then. Maybe it's kind of figuring out what his next destination is. I think you're starting to see some movement around the league, and I think we're getting closer to a couple trades coming through. Again, I'm of the mind that you should be looking at those right shot defensemen, because those are the things that we need the most. We have plenty of draft capital. We have plenty of player capital, because we've got guys in the AHL that probably could be playing NHL minutes on the type of team we are now. It's a lot of young kids in the AHL, which is awesome. And if we were already a winning team, you wouldn't necessarily want to slot those guys in. But as a team that's building and knowing that the losses don't hurt, in fact, they could help. Yeah, I think that that gives us a little more freedom to play a little bit. Speaking of losing and draft pick versus playoffs, I think I should make it very clear. Yes, I want the Sharks to be in the playoffs. Like, the arena is better when they're in the playoffs. My mental well-being is better when they're in the playoffs. But I'm tired of being a playoff team just to be a playoff team. I'm tired of second round exits and being okay with that. I think that this next wave for us needs to be the expectation that we are going to get to the conference finals, get to the finals every year, win cups, plural. Like, those are the expectations you should be setting. And it's not because that's necessarily attainable, but those are the blueprints we should be following. We should be following the blueprints of the Kings, the Blackhawks, the Lightning, and the Panthers. We should be trying to create that, dynasty type team that can just keep rolling through players as need be and stay at the top end of the competition and put a fear. We should be the team. Sorry. We should put fear into other teams, but we should be the team that when we go to play a road game, that fans are showing up to watch us. And judging on, some of the games I watch, we do have some fans that show up, but we should be exciting to watch. We should be, in a season where some other team's not selling tickets, when we show up, that's what moves tickets. And so, no, I don't want to make the playoffs just for making the playoffs. If we're not going to make the playoffs, then I want the highest pick possible. I want one more foundational piece to get us to that step where we're not just making the playoffs. And so don't take what I've been saying as I want them to lose. I want them to get a high draft pick. I would love for them to be in the playoffs. And if they are in the playoffs this year, that means that we've made more progress more quickly than anybody has anticipated. And that in and of itself is exciting. But I don't want to make the playoffs this year to just be a fringe playoff team again next year. If we're going to make the playoffs this year, then you have to hope, and I have faith in the man, that GMMG will figure out who he needs to add pieces wise to not just make the playoffs next year, but really cement ourselves as a playoff team, as a contender. And if that's not what we think we can be this year, then there isn't the reason to play for it other than just getting fans back in the building. So, yeah, there's value in that. And I think that if that's what we're going to do, if we think that if we get to the trade deadline and we're playing just to get in the playoffs, I get it to a certain extent because, again, the fan engagement hasn't been the same that it was. And maybe that's the one catalyst to make it that again. But if it's not, then what did we do? We wasted a year of rebuild to achieve a goal ahead of schedule that we wouldn't necessarily know we could achieve again the following season or better the following season, which is really the whole point. So yeah, again, it's not that I don't want the team to make the playoffs. I love my hockey team and I would love for them to make the playoffs. But I don't want to make the playoffs just to make the playoffs. That's a waste. That was fine when we first made the playoffs because we had been so bad the first 2 years that nobody expected us to make the playoffs for another 5. That was fine after that first sort of rebuild that we did, and coming out of it and getting into that Thornton and Marlowe era. That was fine. But then once we were fully in the throes of the Thornton Marlowe era, every year we should have been expecting conference finals. Every year we should have been expecting the potential of a Stanley Cup. And I'm not saying that we weren't expecting those things. I'm just saying we clearly didn't achieve those things. And so I think as a fan base, our expectation needs to be higher. Like, we need to be excited about small victories, but our expectation needs to be higher and our desire needs to be more lofty. Like, playoffs shouldn't be the goal. Stanley Cup should be the goal. And once we get that into our system, then we won't settle for a team that doesn't look like they compete. Yes, when we get to that point, there are going to be times where we get bounced out in the first round, we get bounced out in the second round, right? That's going to happen because once you get into the playoffs, to a certain extent, it's a crapshoot, and it's who's healthier and better suited that particular series. But our goal shouldn't be first round, second round. Our goal should be Stanley Cup. And if we happen to only get first round or second round, hey, at least we did our best. And when we did our best and it was first or second round, what were the 1 or 2 pieces that needed to be changed? Now we're going to change those in the off season to move forward again on achieving that goal of a Stanley Cup. Yeah. So following up with that, like I said, we've got Utah tonight. On Thursday we get the Kings. It's always good to play the Kings, and even better when we beat them. So hopefully that is something that can come to fruition. Ottawa's been playing decently, and so Ottawa and Boston both have been playing fairly decently. So that should be sort of a good challenge for us, and that they're not necessarily elite right now, but they're good enough that if we can win those games, that can be sort of a statement, especially on back-to-backs. But going through this 4-game stretch, if we get 4 or 5 out of a possible 8 points, that's pretty good, especially coming off of 2 fairly tough losses for us. So, I guess to me in this season, that's sort of the goal. It's a game-by-game basis goal. Like, if that game-by-game stretch ends up getting us into the playoffs, great. But we should be looking one game at a time, and what things did we do better? What things do we still need to improve on? The power play went through a soft spell, still kind of going through a soft spell right now. So in these next couple games, is that something that can be improved on? Obviously, I don't want to say team defense has gotten better, the goaltending's gotten better, but is there a way to make those nights easier for Askarov, easier for Ned, where they can put up a game where they're still only giving up 1 or 2 goals, but they're not having to make 40 saves? Like, is it exciting to see Askarov have a 960 plus save percentage for November? Sure. But that also means that he's facing a crap ton of shots. And it would be nice to cut down on that a little bit. And if we can get both of those guys on the season to be in that 900 save percentage region, we'll be having a much more successful year than we have in years past. So yeah, like solid back there. The defense still needs some work, but also we're changing people in and out every game. Skinner's out. I don't know how that's going to change the lineup. I know Revo's back. I know Ostapchuk was called up. It'd be nice to see Cardsy get called back up, but you know how I feel about Cardsy. It doesn't have to be him because it would also be nice to see Chernyshov get a call up. I think he had a natural hat trick the other day, and he's at 6 goals on the season for the Barracuda. And so if we can get him some ice time just to see what he can do in the league, because he's a big body with definitely some scoring talent and a nose for the net. It'd be interesting to sort of see that. You don't want it necessarily. I mean, you do want it to make you have to make tough decisions, like do you keep him up or do you not keep him up? But more than anything, you just want to get that little bit of exposure so they can see what it's like to play, with men, and see how they handle that, physically, how they handle it emotionally, like how are they coming across? And so he could be potentially a call up as well. It looks like Toffoli's moved down lines a little bit, and I think last I saw, Kurashev was back on the top line, and if that's the case, that's exciting too, because Mac and Will seemed to play really well with him for that short period of time that was happening. And Kurashev played really well on the second line, so I think that he's like that perfect sort of complementary piece on a scoring line where he's sort of a chameleon. He can be whatever it is you need him to be, shift to shift, and that's kind of what those guys need. And they need a guy that can, cover when they get, up in the offensive zone and don't have the opportunity to get back that quickly. At least Kurashev's got the legs to get back into the play, and now you've got 3 guys coming back on defense instead of 2 because Toffoli doesn't have the legs for that anymore. That's okay. Like, he's not young anymore, and I don't know that he really ever had the legs anyway. He's a goal scorer. And he hasn't been scoring goals recently, and I don't think it's for lack of trying by any means, but maybe he needs this little demotion and then be promoted back to right the ship and get some more of those goals in place. What else happened this week? Kings game on Thursday, I believe, is the alumni game. Well, it's not an alumni game, but it's basically bringing back a bunch of the alumni to celebrate Joe Thornton getting inducted into the Hall. So if you're living back home in the Bay, it'd be cool to show up to that. Joe definitely deserves that building to be full because he was a large reason why it was full in the first place. So if you get to go, let me know how it is. I always get real emotional things like that because I spent so much time in that building, but can't be there for this. So yeah, if you go and have a good time, just let me know what you thought. Other than that, again, trying to keep on this week schedule. I know I'm releasing this on a Tuesday. Again, goal is Sunday or Monday so that we can kind of get ready for what that next week looks like. Next week is a little funky with the holiday on Thursday, so I think the schedule will be a little funkier also. Haven't looked that far ahead yet, but we'll get to that next week. And thank you, everybody, for the views last week. I don't know what it came from. I don't know if YouTube just forced me into the algorithm or what was going on, but I went from at best, middling podcast, and for certain, a podcast that was done only for my own benefit, to having a lot of views last week. And I'm thankful for every one of you. And I know that, it's hard to sit around for 20 to 30 minutes to listen to me drivel on about the team that I love so much. But thank you for any amount of time that you put into listening. And hopefully I'm giving you some information that's interesting to you or makes you think in a different way about the team. And as always, make sure you leave comments for me in the comment section below because I want to think differently about the team too. And if you've got a way or got something that you're seeing that's either different than what I'm seeing or maybe something I haven't seen yet, I'm excited to hear about it. I'm going to try to make it a point also during the week to do, more short videos just to kind of keep interest up. So keep me on task. And I can't wait to see y'all for the next episode of View from Outside the Tank. Thanks, guys. See you later.